so interesting, and I'm just now dipping my toe into it, because like for me, and we'll get into this later, but like my that'll be our next topic. We'll talk about our gaming histories
Yeah.
because like that's something a little different, I think, because I feel like there's the YouTubers that have come out. Well, we'll just get into it now. There's the YouTubers that come out and they were gaming from the time they were kids. And they had every console. Oh, I was the kid that had an SNES, then a N64, and all that. And then there's like people like me, and we got a Sega Genesis for $15 when I was like 7, and it came with Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Shinobi 3, and I got Page Masters and Spider-Man a couple months later, and that was it. And then we got an N64 later on and PS2, but like my gaming history was very limited. So now I get to go back and I get to experience these games. But that's why I think gaming is the best history though, because like you can go back and experience these amazing games and acknowledge the history of it and see the history of it and see this industry grow, which is ridiculous. Because think about this: in the time, movies are what, I want to say like 150 years old at this point, or over
Yeah.
100 years.
Yeah, it's 120 first movies kind of came out 1890s, so yeah, about 130.
Okay, well, in 40 years, video games have become the biggest entertainment of in the world. They make more money than movies, television, and music combined. That's ridiculous.
It,
So
it's
like,
it's a media that's grown exceedingly fast.
yeah, and like, what is it? I was reading a article now. I question this because like it was all about hardcore gamers and all that, and they said like 50% of the U.S. population plays some form of video games.
Yeah.
I can acknowledge that. I'm not going to acknowledge like 50% of people play on their PS4. You know?
Yeah, some of those are mobile users and some of them are playing on, handhelds, but it's still gaming at the end of the day.
Yeah, but this is why gaming is so amazing though, because you can the history. Like I'm a history buff. That's why I keep saying I just love the history of it, and you can experience this history and you can fall in love with it. Like for me, I got Chrono Trigger back there. I know more. I know crap tons about Chrono Trigger. I've watched Did You Know Gaming's video. I watch every little scrap of video I can find about it. Have I finished the game yet? No, but I can have it up on my wall because I appreciate what it stands for.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people like that that might not have finished the game but do support it and love it and try to uh represent that love in some way. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is that it's because it's the interactivity, people
Mm-hmm.
get a lot more attached to that type of media because for a lot of them it's like they're in this world, they get to experience this world and become really attached to this character or this story, the gameplay. Some people get really attached to even just the world that they're being presented to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's why it does have that feeling that it's so much more documented, because people really get into their games. Like nobody really remembers the first time they watched Aladdin, but some people might have a vivid memory of playing a specific type of game that they love. Like I remember the first time I played Devil May Cry, which is probably one like my favorite series, pretty much bar none.
Mm-hmm.
And I got it. It was the first game I got with my PS2. I was 8 years old. Don't ask me why my dad got me a mature rated game for an 8 year old, but I thank him for it.
Cool dad.
But cool dad, it came with the PS2, the Devil May Cry 1, and the strategy guide with it. But unbeknownst to me, because the PS2 was the first current gen console I had. Before that, it was like an NES and a Game Boy. Like I
Mm-hmm.
leaped like 3 generations of consoles to get to the PS2.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't know it needed a memory card, because when I went to my friends to
Oh.
play on the N64, they had, it was just a cartridge, and I was used
Mm.
to the cartridges on my Game Boy and on my NES, so I wasn't used to needing a dedicated piece of hardware for a save file. I played friends' PS1s, but I didn't realize that because I was a stupid 8 year old. But so me and my friend one day, until I finally got a memory card, played through the entire game in one day. Like we took
Oh.
like a break here and there, but we played through the entire game on one dedicated save file that just never turned off. And that was like a really fun experience because that game's like for an 8-year-old, that game's hard as shit. But we just
Okay.
plugged through that game and got to the end, and that was just like such a fun experience, I remember. And I think we got
Hmm.
taken out to go bowling that day, and it was just we were just like so antsy to get back home so we could finish this Devil May Cry game that we got.
Yeah. But like, I mean, okay, let's look at it this way. How many times have you watched a series, or like a television show or a movie, and then you were like, okay, you finished it, but you were interested in it, so you wanted to look into it.
Not really that often, but I think it's also dependent on personal tastes. Because
Yeah.
there are some people that love watching a Marvel movie and kind of want to hear more about like, hey, what did the director do this? Why did they choose to do this? Like there's clearly an interest in that because there's film classes that are about the history of films.
Yeah.
So, but I do think there is a very nugget of truth with the whole games being so documented is just because it's so much more involved in terms of a creative process and in terms of a piece of media,
Experience.
in terms of an experience, in terms of a piece of media, because it's not a passive form of media.
Yeah.
It's
I
it's a
also
forcibly interactive media.
Yeah, I also feel like that's why we're never gonna get an amazing video game movie, because we got Tomb Raider coming out next month and Ready Player One's book, but
Yeah.
I love that book, but I feel like a lot of problems with like the movies in the end is everybody has those vivid memories of playing this game, sitting on that couch with the blanket over them, and then playing this game, and there's that strange disconnect, you know what I mean, when you're just sitting there watching this character that you've experienced, not to mention then you have a 16-hour game condensed into a 2-hour long movie.
Yeah, I've made this point in certain videos. Is that one of the strongest reasons that we don't have a good adaptation is because video games, much like books, are paced very different than movies are. Like other than like things like The Last of Us and a couple other things, there's such a different pacing that makes it hard to adapt to movie without having to make huge changes and cutting out characters, cutting out certain
Exactly.
scenes, certain sequences, because a game has to be paced between having cutscenes and having gameplay. Like it has to be paced between those two things, or else it starts to kind of get
Yeah.
wobbly, where it's like, oh, I was really getting invested in that story. Now I got to go play the game, or I was really getting into that fight. Now we're getting interrupted with cutscenes. So it's such a different process that doesn't naturally transition into a 2-hour movie. Do I think it's possible? Yes, I do. It's just we currently haven't found that missing piece, and I think part of
Hmm.
it is just it's the medias haven't lined up quite just yet. I think there's still people trying to tinker at that problem and solve it because I
Yeah.
think there is potential. It's just we haven't found it yet.
Well, I think the potential lies in like the story heavy video games and all
Yeah,
that. That's where it's gonna have to be. So like your Tomb Raiders, your Uncharted, your Last of Us, you know,
and there's never going to
and
be a Street Fighter live action movie that's going to be any good.
no, no, I don't understand why they went. Hey, but you know what? I will say this: that Double Dragon movie in the '90s, gold,
Yeah.
like, just pure gold. No, but I actually kind of have high hopes for Tomb Raider. I'm actually
I do. I think it's a movie that's fitting because like is like a weird parallel. It's like, uh Laura Croft inspired Uncharted, and Uncharted's like a super cinematic experience.
oh yeah,
And on the flip side of that whole inspiration is that Laura Croft was kind of inspired by Indiana Jones. So it's like
yeah,
there's no logical reason that you couldn't adapt Laura Croft into a movie in that way. Like it
yeah.
makes so much sense that I'm kind of baffled that it wouldn't work.
Well, I don't see how they botched it up the last two times. But then again, they had an Angelina Jolie.
Yeah, I think it just was again, it was just a failed attempt. Like same thing with Assassin's Creed. Like Assassin's Creed, the
Oh,
film did not have to be so boring.
that
Like
that.
like it was just an example of people were working on the project, didn't know the source material.
Hmm.
Like maybe Michael Fassbender loved Assassin's Creed. I don't know.
I
Um,
doubt it.
maybe they tinkered around with the script and it didn't work, because I know Ubisoft was involved with the script process. I know they were heavily involved in making it, and it might have been just like video game people and movie people trying to work together just didn't mesh properly. I think that's my gut feeling on why it didn't work.
Hmm.
We'll never 100% know, but it's shocking how boring that movie was.
It's
I don't even think it was
ridiculous.
bad. I think it was just boring.
Well, I mean, that was one of the things that prompted Ubisoft to be like, okay, we're taking a year off. We're taking
Yeah.
a year off.
Yeah, it's weird that their attempt to go into a movie delayed them making games.
Well, yeah, but see, like they announced they were taking the year off before the movie was even out, so they knew
Yeah.
that movie was crap.
Well, I think they also realized that they've kind of people were getting fatigued from the series. I think they got a
Yeah,
lot of reception from people that are like, okay, we don't need a yearly thing. We don't need a yearly Assassin's Creed. You guys can take a break a little bit. Make the next
I
game better. Make the next game really good, and
I would have loved to have been in that meeting when they were just like, so how's the movie going? Oh, it's crap. And then the other guy, how's that new game going?
not great.
It's gonna be something, you know. So when you releasing that new game? Oh,
Yeah.
October.
Yeah,
When you releasing the movie?
Ubisoft
December.
CEOs sweating.
Ubisoft CEO is just like, okay, guys, we can't keep going on like this.
I will give them credit that Origins was a step in the right direction again. I'll
Oh,
give them that
Origins is
because
like such a step in the right
yeah,
direction.
like that's a weird series that's had a lot of rockiness for how strongly it came out of the gates at first. So
Yeah.
for
Well,
like
like
because it's one of the first like modern legacy IPs is what I would say in terms of like something that came out like late 2000s
mhm.
that
Well,
like
like
everybody knows.
that's what it's gonna be interesting to see. You know what I mean? Because like now we're kind of seeing a new Ubisoft now because they're like, holy crap, we gave this game time and it did well. You
Oh, who
know,
would have thunk it?
yeah. And now, so then they delayed Far Cry 5, and their unannounced IP, which is probably let's be honest, it's probably the sequel to Origins, if we're not
Yeah,
gonna be,
probably.
or maybe a new Watch Dogs, which
I have fingers crossed that we might see a Prince of Persia, but I doubt it. That
I
series seems to be so like lost in the sands.
I think Disney killed that with the movie.
I don't know because I still think they could bring it back, but I just think they might be just waiting a while. That's the weird thing about game development that I always notice is there's stuff that's like people want, but for some reason the companies get really scared and fidgety about it. Like like the DMC Devil May Cry, I want to say is largely why it's taken us so long to get anything related to DMC 5 coming out.
Oh, that's gonna be announced this year,
If it isn't, I'm gonna be livid because I've
especially
been
with the
hearing
HD
rumors for so long.
remaster.
Yeah, with the HD
Especially with
remaster. I
yeah
think it's just
that
a collections. I don't think it's remastered too much, but
yeah.
I'm hotly anticipating for the announcement of 5, but I'm pretty sure the reason why it's taken so long is because DMC one or DMC Devil May Cry got such a bad reception. And it's the same thing with stuff like Capcom Cross Tekken. Like the reason why we haven't gotten the Bandai Namco's version of it is because there's still stink around that series. Because that was the deal that Capcom and Tekken kind of, or Capcom and Bandai Namco kind of agreed in it on is we'll have our version of the crossover where it's a 2D fighter, and you guys are going to have your version where it's going to be a 3D fighter. But for some
Mhm.
reason, Bandai Namco has never. It sounds like it's in production. They've mentioned that it's in production. It's just not coming out anytime soon. So I don't know when and if it's gonna release. Is Akuma being in Tekken 7 supposed to be that equivalent? I don't know. Some people think that might be the end of it, but
Hmm. It'd be
you know,
interesting to like talk to a developer once, and like one of the developers in the last 3 years that released games that were in development for so long, like Final Fantasy 15
yeah.
or The Last Guardian, and see like when do you guys, when you're approaching that point where you're just like, okay, we've been in development now for 8 years. How do you feel when you're like, okay, we're about to release this game? You know what I mean? There's got to be a lot of anxiety in that.
It must be such a nightmare for them because there's so much anticipation built up. I can't imagine what it's going to be like for the people making Kingdom Hearts 3
Oh,
because people were anticipating 15, but I don't think to the same level that people have been anticipating 3. Because like
yeah.
I played Kingdom Hearts 1 when I was a kid back in 2001, 2002, and I've been waiting for that game for the last like 10 years. Like, when's 3? Okay, cool. Birth by Sleep, that's a really fun game. When's 3? Okay, Dream Drop Distance 3D. Funny. When's 3? Like, when are you giving me 3? And
Yeah.
all those games are important because it builds on the story. So I'm not going to say they're like unimportant. And that's kind of why Kingdom Hearts is kind of a mess story wise because it's spread across like 5 different consoles.
Hmm.
But like so many people are anticipating that game and seeing the reaction that people had for the most recent trailers, where there's people like crying, like sobbing that it's like we're finally getting it. Like 2018 is the year we're getting it.
I'm gonna laugh when that's delayed.
There's an ongoing meme where it's like, oh, it's never been delayed, it's not going to be delayed, and I was like, I don't know, considering how many times they delayed 15, I don't have a lot of faith in Square Enix. I
I gotta.
hope that we're going to get in November. I pray to God we will, but I don't trust Square Enix at this point.
Oh, you're not kidding. I will be shocked if we see that game in 2018.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
that'll be a surprise. But if it does come out in 2018 and it's fine, like no problems, I will be overjoyed. But the pessimist in me says it's probably going to get pushed to early 2019.
I think that'd be a better sale for it too, because like what I'm thinking is like, okay, we know that's gonna be a Sony. It's gonna be pushed very heavily on the Sony platform.
Yeah, yeah,
And if you look at Sony's lineup this year alone, we are definitely getting Spider-Man.
yeah,
Spider-Man is coming out in 2018. They're too confident for it not to.
yeah.
God of War has already been confirmed. Detroit Become Human, I bet we get a release date in the next couple months.
Yeah,
And
it was supposed to be quarter 1, but it doesn't seem like they've pulled the trigger on a release date. So I'm assuming probably late quarter 2 if it does come out
I think that's going to be a
at
summer
some point.
game. I
It's
think
gonna be what?
I think that's going to be Sony's summer game. Like it's going to be June,
Yeah,
July-ish.
yeah. That'll
I
be like
think
a slot. That'll be a slot filler because I don't even think Sony has confidence in that game anymore.
well, I think they do, but I think it's you got to look at Heavy Rain and what was the last one? Beyond Two
Beyond Two
Souls.
Souls.
And let's be honest, like those aren't exactly like PlayStation sellers. They're for people who played them and enjoy them. People are
Yeah.
like, you have to play Heavy Rain. I haven't heard anybody come out and be like, Beyond Two Souls is the shit, man. You
No,
know?
that's a very anomalous to hear that,
Yeah,
and that's why
but
I think a lot of people don't have faith in Detroit coming out and doing gangbusters.
looks fantastic.
It looks great. Like that's the one
Yeah.
thing that studio has always done well at is that, man, they're pretty good at facial animations and making good looking character models. Stories aren't exactly the strongest points of their like games.
But I bet that's what it's either going to be Detroit Become Human, Days Gone, or Spider-Man's going to be the summer game.
Yeah,
You
yeah, for
know,
sure.
and I think like if anyone's going to be your fall game, it's going to be Spider-Man.
Yeah,
But at the same point in time, I think Sony's is kind of looking at Red Dead Redemption 2 and being like, oh, that game will eat our lunch if we
yeah,
put Spider-Man there. So I think if they're really on a warpath to get all 3 of those games out this year, they're gonna send Days Gone out to die.
yeah.
I think that'd be the one that's the one they're gonna be like, okay, there it
But I
goes.
but I still think that there is viability in Kingdom Hearts 3 coming out in November. Like I think that is a strong selling point for them because it's the Christmas time and that's when 15 came out and 15 did pretty good sales wise. I think it was early December when that game came out.
Yeah, but
But uh 3 has such like I don't think anything's going to compete with 3 because everybody that wants that game is going to eat that up. Like it is like going to be devoured and then what's going to be left is for the general population that wants to pick it up after hearing good reception.
okay, but let's think about it this way, okay? Like if we look at the fall lineup, we're definitely getting an Ubisoft game.
Yeah.
Ubisoft has not missed a fall lineup yet.
No.
Okay, there's the Red Dead Redemption 2, which is going to be a huge game.
Yeah.
You know, that game is gonna sell amazingly. Then you got your Battlefield or slash Battlefront or your Call of Duty,
Yeah.
and then Sony, and then Xbox, and I'm gonna throw in the new Tomb Raider game too, because you know we've been. It would make sense, you know. Next month is the Tomb Raider movie. You're gonna announce your Tomb Raider game.
Yeah. We're finally gonna get confirmation on. I think it's Shadow of Tomb Raider
Yeah,
or something like that.
and then that would launch in the fall. So
Yeah.
then, like, here's this, and then if Spider-Man or Days Gone, and then Xbox, I would be willing to bet that we're gonna get, what would it be? Yeah, State of Decay 2 was supposed to come out earlier this year, but I wonder if they're not gonna just push it till the fall, so they have something, which would suck because I want State of Decay 2 and give me an excuse to get an Xbox again.
Yeah.
Because mine died. But
Someone needs it.
yeah, someone needs it. But I think we're gonna, and you know, Xbox is definitely gonna push back. What is it? Or in the Blind Forest, Willow or the Wisps or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Whispering Willow. I think that's gonna be that late summer game. You can't put that out in fall. That's just
But
suicide.
that's also an indie game, so I don't know how much attention they give that to, like, in terms of like.
Okay, no, it's not an indie game. Moon Studios
That's full.
is owned by Microsoft. It's
That's
no
like
longer.
no, but
You
it's
can't
it's
be-
not like a full price 60 game that's getting a like a box in like GameStop.
Oh, I bet this one gets a box. If Ori and the
Really?
Blind Forest got a box, this one's getting a box.
Oh, it did. Okay, I always saw Ori and the Blind Forest like $30 on digital, so it's like
Yeah.
I just thought it's like, oh, this is like a digital only type of title.
As much as I love Ori and the Blind Forest, I hate when people are like, "It's an indie title." I'm like, "No, it's not. You can't. You can't."
I was
be owned.
I was misusing though. Like I just referred to it as indie in terms of like
Yeah.
it's a digital only $30 type of game, not like a AAA. Like I just used indie as in terms of like the antithesis to the AAA.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of something we need eventually. We need a title for those kind of in between middle
Second
ground
party.
type games. Second party, yeah, I guess. Yeah,
Kinda
just something
like
that doesn't
how-
have like a huge budget, but also isn't like made by 5 people. Like something that's kind of just middle
Yeah.
tier game release.
But
but-
like that, getting back to where we were though, the fall is gonna be just swamped with
Yeah.
games, especially there's a little bit of people being too silent right now. You
Yeah.
know? And so E3 is gonna be packed.
I do
And-
hope so because it feels weird, eerily silent in terms of what's coming out in 2018 in terms of like factual release dates and confirmations.
Yeah.
And man, 2018 is going to have such a hard time following up how big 2017 was, and that's why I feel it feels so quiet. Is like, man, like 2017 had so many huge hits
Mm-hmm.
that you're almost kind of curious, like what are these companies going to bring out next? Because none of them pulled out all of their guns. They always keep something in the back pocket for later.
Especially Nintendo. Nintendo's
Yeah.
going to be so interesting to watch.
Yeah,
this.
Nintendo's very good at keeping their cards close to the chest in terms of what they're doing, what the hell they're doing. And then
Yeah.
so sometimes they'll put out the stuff that's just kind of almost like a laugh where it's like, oh, here's the Labo stuff or here's the new Amiibos. But it's like, what's their next? When are we going to hear more about Prime?
Yeah,
Metroid Prime 4. Like that's the next
E3.
big
that's gonna
title
be
that I
E3.
want to see them talk about. But
I
if we
wanna
got
know-
another April 2017 or like Q1 2017, I'd be super excited
Yeah.
because that was such a huge like here's Nier
Persona
Automata,
5,
Persona
Nier,
5, Horizon Zero
Horizon.
Dawn, Legend of Zelda, Neo came out. Holy shit, that game got swept under the rug
Yeah.
with everything else around, even though it was a good game. For Honor, a bunch of other games. It literally felt like there was too much. Like that was the most overwhelming time to be someone that was into games, especially like for games journalists, because it was like, here's all these games that are huge. Like
Yeah.
all of these games are like 50-hour games at least. Have fun.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, like, look at this. Like, I'm looking at the fall, and fall's definitely going to be a big packed fall this year, especially for like indie games. I think we're going to get some. I'm curious to see where the indies are because, you know, like we had some big indies this last year, like Hollow Knight. Holy crap,
Yeah.
I love Hollow Knight. But like this fall is just, you know, looking funny, and with Kingdom Hearts in there, I don't think. If I was Square, I would not want to release Kingdom Hearts in the fall. If I would, I'd try to get
Huh.
it out in the summer. I would not put it out in the fall because it'd die. I'm telling you this right now. It would die, especially going
No,
up
I feel
against
there's such a strong player base with Kingdom Hearts 3 that there's no way that that
really.
game wouldn't do gangbusters. I feel personally that late 2018 would be the strongest time to release, and that's kind of basically what the time they've set on is in terms of like we've been
Yeah,
hearing rumors for the last like 2 months that it's probably going to be 28 November 2018, which I think is probably the best time for that game because again, Christmas time, that's when everybody's going to get time off school, and
I
everybody that cares about that game is in their mid to late 20s.
I
Probably
could
some a little
see
bit older,
it.
probably some a little bit later, but I feel a lot of people are like in our age range of university students that played Kingdom Hearts when they were a kid because they were like, "Oh, this Final Fantasy game that has Disney characters. Oh, that sounds cool." And then they played through it and they loved it, and it was like a big nostalgia trip. So, and all the reaction videos I've seen of 3 are people that are about my age that are like sobbing seeing Sora and
That's too
Goofy
much
and
for me.
Donald again.
That's too much for me. You're crying over that. That's too much.
I think it's just a lot of people are just really emotional because it's something they've been like holding on to so long. That's the thing that I find fascinating, and I wanted to do a video on it. Is like, why does Kingdom Hearts resonate so strongly for people?
I
Because
think
that's a
that's
game
just
for how it's so
go on.
such a goofy game, like no pun intended. Um, but people just adore that series, just adore the hell out of it, and I think part of it's nostalgia, but I
Hmm.
think it ties back to loops back around to something we were talking about before, where it's really passionate. It's very like
Yeah.
it's very sincere. I guess passionate's not right the word. It's very sincere. It's never trying to be anything it's not. It's not trying to take itself too seriously. It's not trying to chase trends. It's just like, hey, this is our thing. Have fun. And I think
Yeah.
that's what grabs a lot of people's attention with that series and even stuff with Nintendo. Nintendo's been really good at that kind of thing where it's just pure, unadulterated fun, no judgment. Like, if you want to have this goofy story about a character jumping between Disney worlds, like, have at it. And I think that's what just
Yeah.
a lot of people just really grasp onto.
Well, there is a game that we are forgetting about though.
What's that?
Excuse me. Final Fantasy VII remake.
That's the game I think Square Enix is going to save till next year because if they're planning to release Kingdom Hearts 3 this year, they're not going to be releasing remake at the same time.
I think we're gonna see it at E3 this year. It's been too long. We
We're
got
going
to
to
see
see it.
something
We're
from
going to see it, but I think they're going to say we're going to get the
in
announcement that it'll
development.
be 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that game's been in development for a while, but it's also a really large game. So
Well, like what I'm curious about is now, because like before it was that it was being developed by an outside studio, but with like Square Enix people being in the producer roles and stuff, and then
yeah,
there were talks that it was going to be a 3-person game, 3 different games, and like an episodic game, and then now the last piece of news we got from it is they're bringing the development into in house for it, and I'm like, okay.
yeah. It
You
sounds
know,
like it was been a development nightmare at the other studios, is what I've been kind of sensing out from interviews and people talking about it, which
mhm.
doesn't give me a lot of hope. But I also don't blame them because that's a game that's like I don't feel like I'm not jealous for the people that have to make that game because that's no matter what, people are going to be upset about that game. Like nobody's going to play that game and be like, "This is perfect representation."
Of
They're going
what
to
I
do something
saw in
that
my mind when I first played it.
exactly. It's like that's not what Tifa wears. She has this type of shirt, and it'll
Yeah.
be a lot of that kind of nonsense. Uh, and also Square Enix, for any complaints you might have, they're very like attached to their properties. Like they're very careful about what they do. Like
Yeah.
they're not haphazardly using their properties. So if something is not going right, they're going to take it back and go, okay, no, like what can we do to fix this? Like even 15, I have to give them credit, and I almost wanted to talk about this in a video. That game they've been slowly improving over the last year, even though it's not like worth their time because everybody that's bought it already bought it. but they're still like plugging away, making little improvements here and there, adding systems in. Because it's not even just patches; it's literally they're adding in new systems, which isn't
Yeah,
easy.
I bought the season pass about 3 months ago, and I started playing through it again. It's almost
A
unrecognizable
different game.
game. Yeah, it's ridiculous how much they put into that.
Yeah, because I have a YouTube friend, Codex Entry, that I highly recommend, and he did a video that talked about the question of like when do you review a game? Like when is a game like finished at this point? Because we're
Hmm.
no longer getting N64 cartridges that it's like this is the complete product. Have a
Yeah,
blast.
you're
It's
not
like
getting any more.
yeah, we're not getting any more of that. It's like now it's like you have Final Fantasy 15, which is like almost a different game. Same thing for Diablo 3.
Hmm.
Like the Diablo 3 you play now was completely different from what the reviewers played, you know, what was it,
Or
5 years
World of
ago?
Warcraft.
Or World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft's constantly getting updates, and same for like Destiny, like a lot of these big MMOs. So it's like, when do you fairly critique something at that point? Because the review you're gonna see on Wikipedia and on Google when you type in like Final Fantasy 15 is all going to be the day one release uh, numbers and not the current like feelings about the game. So there's that
Yeah.
like ongoing question of like, is this finished? Like
Another game like that was is No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky, yeah, No Man's Sky like went through a lot of developments, and I've heard like, oh, it's actually a pretty good game now. It's like, yeah, it's too bad they missed their chance.
Yeah, they
Like
they fumbled that hard.
yeah, like it kind of felt like Hello Games like basically got their money and then got it at a dodge as soon as they like got their paycheck and were out of there. Because I
Yeah.
love that saga. That saga was amazing of hearing like that developer like go through all that stuff, and then basically it came out, it was a disaster, and then it was like, when's the next patch? And then it was like Hello Games is like empty. It was like they made off with their money and
Crickets.
moved on to the next town to try again.
Yeah.
But also that was Sony's fault. I actually don't even feel that was Hello Games' fault. It was Sony's
It it's a fault
marketing.
on both parts. I think it's Hello Games for not like tampering the expectations till the day before,
Yeah.
and then it's Sony's fault for bringing this up on the E3 stage and being like, "Look at all this."
Yeah, look at this
Totally gonna
big
work
hype
that way.
thing. Like, oh my God, so special. And then it was like I could almost see I can't remember the guy's name. It's not Sean Layden, it's Sean something, but I just saw the head
Uh,
developer just like pulling his like necktie, being like,
yeah.
this isn't what we were promising. This is getting a little
Well,
bit too complicated.
he walked out on stage and he never like in his defense he never did say that this is what it is, you know what I mean? He didn't actually say that, but he wasn't like, no, that's not in the game right now,
Yeah.
he just like, oh well, maybe, and I'm just like, you can't do
There
that.
was a lot of there was a lot of vagueness. I remember looking at interviews in the past to like do a thing on him, and it was like, oh my God, this guy, like, you can see he's dancing around the topic so hard because he just wants to avoid giving concrete ideas about what the game is.
Yeah, it'd be
Because right
cool
now it's
to
because right
be.
now it's everything for everybody. Like it's
Yeah,
like space
it'd be
Skyrim, and if you can do all this stuff, and then it was like, not really, and kind of you'd see him kind of like shifting around in his seat as they're asking him questions.
it'd be cool to see the like be a fly on the wall during that, during the meetings with Sony and Hello Games at that point,
Yeah.
because that, that there has to be more to that story, because either Sony was like, you can't say this, you can't say that this isn't in it, or whatever. There has to be more to that story.
Yeah, yeah, because that's a really always like the unique thing about press conferences when it comes to games is because you can tell there's like the publisher, the developer, and then the person that's actually going to be on stage, and it's like how many filters are they working around? How many filters do they have to deal with? And it makes me think of the Game Awards. What's the name? The guy who
Jeff Keighley.
no, not Jeff Keighley, the guy that said the fuck the Oscars guy.
Oh,
I
I
can't
have no
remember his
idea. I
name.
can't remember him.
I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But
What did he make?
he made Brothers. He made Brothers Two
Okay.
Tales, but I can't remember what the current game is. His current game is
Oh, A Way
it's
Out.
Way Out. Thank you. The developer is making Way Out. That's why people I think love that guy so much is because it was so unfiltered, just off the cusp. Just this is what I feel about this. and you don't see that enough at like press conferences. Like their press conferences are all about like how do we market this? How do we present this in the most like HR possible way? Like I'm in university for communications, which is a lot of HR talk. And anytime I watch those press conferences, I'm always taking note of like how they talk to the audience, what type of language are they using. And that guy was just full on, just unfiltered. Here's my opinions on these things. And it was
Well,
like, he's gonna get fired. He's probably gonna he's if he's not gonna get fired, he's definitely gonna get a real stern talking to from EA. Because EA does not want to talk about the loot box problem or the controversies they're dealing with. And he addressed it in a very unprofessional way on live television or on live YouTube.
well,
And EA did not want that.
I think EA is kind of like, let's try to avoid any loot box situations in the next
Yeah,
year.
exactly. But they don't want to talk about it if it's not on their terms of like addressing it. Like even the EA controversy was like really interesting to watch because how they were trying to not address it or like they wanted to address it in a very business way, and that's what
But
drove a lot of gamers crazy is because they wanted the real answers.
but look how much they fumbled that. I mean,
Exactly.
you
Exactly.
can't you can't make that up. Here we are, you guys. Someone, okay, let's just go through the chain here, okay? They made the game. They were implementing the microtransactions and loot boxes, and someone thought it was a great idea to make Darth Vader worth what was it, like 1,000 hours of gameplay or two
I
hundred
think it was
dollars?
like I think people it was incorrectly calculated at 40, but it was
Oh,
actually
okay,
closer to 10. But even then, it was still kind of unreasonable to have a character that was unlocked in the previous games
okay.
locked away in the current one.
But okay, 10 hours. You're asking for 10 hours for a full. Okay, I go buy this game for $60. 10 hours later, I can now unlock Darth Vader, just the base model.
Yeah.
Okay, not to mention there's a credits cap. So like all this was purposely designed so
Yeah.
that it would force you to want to buy the microtransactions. So eventually, you just break in and be like, "Fuck it," we give them the money.
Yeah, it was designed around getting more purchases and
Yeah.
like
Okay.
no matter how you slice it, that was what the design was.
Yeah, and then you go, and then when everybody's like, oh, when everybody's freaking out about it, EA is like, okay, we now halved the price. So, okay, now it's gonna be 5 hours. Okay, and once again, still kind of has that predatory nature of making you want to buy a microtransaction. And then EA is like, okay, fine, they're out of the game.
Well,
And now,
you missed a step though.
oh,
They halved the cost of getting the heroes, but then they also
yeah,
half the cost of some of the earnings you could get
yeah. Sorry,
because the campaign
sorry,
was designed the campaign was designed around you earning enough credits to get the purchase the character from the campaign for the like multiplayer, and then where people were like, "Hey, I originally earned this much doing the campaign. Why is it half now?" And they're like, "Well, the campaign's only for this character. It's not really meant for extra earnings."
So
And it was
basically,
like,
nothing changed.
yeah, and it's like so nothing really changed. It was a very like surface level change on their part.
Yeah.
I don't know how much they changed the cost earnings of matches and all that stuff, but I imagine it was very similarly tinkered around with.
Hmm.
So it was very surface level apology. And again, with the whole like just public relations dealing with it, it's like that must have been a nightmare for them trying to figure out the best way to address this problem without taking fault. Because no company wants to take fault. No company wants to uh, address that they did something wrong. A recent one that I was kind of irked by, but I also was like, whatever, I'm probably not going to get the game. Was Guilty Gear or no Blaze Blue cross battle.
Okay.
Um, so it's the Arc system works like Persona Arena, Blaze Blue, Guilty Gear, and Ruby crossover game fighting game,
Hmm.
and 20 characters in the main roster, and then they announced 20 DLC characters, and a lot of people are like, why do I have to pay this much to like that's DL how do you have so many characters in DLC? And it's like the it's a lot about semantics, and I had this argument with people where it's like I feel like the only problem isn't so much the business ethics, it's how they presented it to the audience. Because
Mhm.
Street Fighter V currently has probably more DLC characters than their main roster was. Like they
Yeah.
6 each, 18 characters that are DLC at this point. That's probably just as much as there was in the main roster at the launch of the game. I don't think anybody has real problems with that because it was slowly piecemealed out over
Yeah.
2 years, give or take. Whereas you're not being told at face value, this is half, you're getting the other half later in DLC. And
Well.
the big
Oh,
issue for me was that they halved the main cast of Ruby. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the show.
no.
The main cast is 4 characters, Ruby, Weiss, Blake, and Yang, and only the first 2 were going to be in the base game, and then the other 2 were going to be the DLC. And it was like, that's the only comparison I can think of is if you had Raphael and Michelangelo in a fighting game, but you didn't have the other 2, or the other
Leonardo
2
and
were DLC.
Donatello.
Yeah, it would feel like you're cutting out half the like main roster. So
Yeah.
eventually, the Arc System Works came and said, okay, those 2 characters are going to be DLC, but they'll be free.
Okay.
They backtrack because they realized how much people were giving them shit for it.
But like, how much of the EA problem? Like, okay, like I feel like a lot of the EA's problem was they did that, and then not what was it like? Within 2 weeks of that, they came out and was like, okay, yeah, we canceled the new one one player Star Wars game because we wanted a more, what was it, rounded experience or something
They
like
wanted
that.
a more
Player focused,
player
like
focused experience, which is basically that they want more multiplayer type stuff. They didn't feel single player. I can't remember the language they used, but it was like, looking at current trends,
it was
single player
basically
experiences aren't what's selling.
it was basically we couldn't have multiplayer and microtransactions and DLC in this thing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's kind of what a lot of people took from that.
it
Um,
was basically what it was, and
which
then it's
is
just like, yeah.
which is
So
really
like,
disappointing because I just to really address a point real quickly
yeah.
because I think it's worth it. Um, if anybody does check out that book, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, the last chapter alone is a selling point because it goes into the history of Star Wars 313.
Mm-hmm.
Given it ends when it goes to EA, but then at that point you kind of know where that ends. But it literally starts with like, this game started at LucasArts and they were making it and they had this whole plan figured out around it. It's going to be kind of like uh, Shadows of the Empire, where you had like a Dash Rendar type of character that they made for the story.
Mm-hmm.
Lucas came in and he was like, "Hey, make it a Boba Fett," and then they had to design like a demo they'd already finished around Boba Fett, which was a fucking nightmare because they had to have it finished for E3. So it was this
Mm-hmm.
constant evolving nightmare, and then they got sold to LucasArts, EA, and it was this
Yeah.
whole thing. And it's honestly, that chapter is like the most heart wrenching thing, knowing how much these people put in 6 years of their lives to basically see it get canceled 3 times.
Yeah, and then
Like,
you also got, but like within a month, you guys did that, and then you released it, and it still made money. Let's be honest, like they released sales figures. What was it, 2 weeks ago? It
yeah,
still made its money back, but
not enough to them.
yeah, not enough to them. That's another thing. You should never be like, okay, we made our money back, but it wasn't enough, so we're putting microtransactions back
Yeah,
in, which they did say they were going to put back in.
yeah.
But it's just like, what is your guys' problem there? And like that's why EA has such a bad like reputation because they do crap like that. And then like Visceral, here's this talented first person, this talented single player developer that's focused on making an amazing game. And then you guys are just like, yep, we shut them down and Star Wars is gone. And it's just like, guys, that game would have sold. I don't know why you guys, and that's another thing with the EA. Why are they so eager to support these indie developers with like Fee or however you pronounce it, and
Yeah.
A Way Out, and what was it, Yarny or Wooly or something, whatever, Tangled. Sorry,
Yeah.
Tangled. But we're not going to take a risk on a third person single player game written by Amy Hennig, the woman behind Uncharted.
That's the most disappointing thing is that it's like that you knew that story was going to be at least pretty
Amazing.
good. Yeah, like I'm not gonna give her like the entire thing of like it was gonna be the best thing ever, but it's like with her pedigree, it would have been pretty good. At the very least, it would
Yeah.
have been a pretty good Star Wars story.
Well, apparently it was going to be the young Boba Fett story, like
And
taken from
that's
1313.
because that was what was forced on them by George Lucas like halfway through
Yeah.
development because it was originally just going to be original character,
Yeah.
and then he was like, make it Boba Fett, and I was like, okay, I guess we're making it about Boba Fett now.
But like that's the same problem with EA's has with Xbox.
Yeah,
And you can see this with Sony. Sony is willing to take the risks. With they kept funding The Last Guardian for 10 years. It came out. I have no idea what the sales numbers are.
yeah,
But Sony's just like, okay, yeah, take your risks. Gravity Rush, another one. Love those games. They took the risk. Nintendo takes a risk with Xenoblade behind me. But Microsoft and EA and a lot of these other developers are just like, no, it hit a roadblock. We're done. We're not going to take that big of a risk.
yeah. To basically make a big, big, big circle back around to the original talking point about this, which is gaming on YouTube, and I think that's kind of what's important about people making talk discussion points about video games on YouTube is because YouTubers now have a lot more influence
Than
on
ever
stuff like
before.
that
Yeah.
because the reason EA got in so much shit is not only were people aware of it, but there was people like Jim Sterling making videos about why this is such bad business practices and what's the problem with this. And of course, you have people defending them too, but then that's just developing the discussion so everybody can make an informed discussion. Like you're not just getting one journalist's opinion, you're getting a bunch of YouTubers kind of talking about it, people on podcasts, you know, IGN articles, however you want to put your message out there. We're saying this is the stuff we liked. And then there's indie darlings that do super well because people are promoting it, like Shovel Knight. Like I love Shovel Knight, and I'm super,
Oh
super
yeah.
glad that game did gangbusters and stuff like Pyre and the stuff that Supergiant Games makes. And it's because there's people on YouTube that are like, this game's amazing. Like what? Like you guys need to check this out. Doki Doki Literature Club. That was a free game that people just found and were like, check this out. This is a cool game that has all these interesting little
Mm-hmm.
different things they do. And it's
Well,
because
like
there's
Five
passionate
Nights at
people.
Freddy's was
Five Nights at Freddy's.
would never
Say
have
what you
been.
will about where it went now, but
Yeah.
YouTubers made it popular.
PewDiePie made it popular. Flappy Bird
Yeah.
was another one. PewDiePie. But like, yeah, I mean, it's amazing what we can do in this community now. And I mean, me and you are kind of smaller. You're bigger than I am, but we're the smaller guys out there.
Yeah.
But it's like, and you know what? Let's end this. Let's end the podcast on this note because when you look into YouTube gaming and just the gaming in general on YouTube, they say it's the hardest to break into,
Yeah.
but it's also like the biggest market.
Oh, 100%. Like it's full of passionate people. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's what, other than gaming being a very popular market just in of itself, it's just full of
Mm-hmm.
people that love this medium and want to talk about it or want to play games and show people cool stuff that they've done. There's people that do trick videos. There's people that do like combo stuff. You have people like Maximilian, dude, that are basically dedicated to making the fighting games more accessible. You have the
Mm-hmm.
super best friends that are about making entertainment, let's plays. Super Bunny Hop that makes uh informative videos about like journalism. Like he does by definition journalism, like investigating stuff.
Okay.
Jim Sterling does really good in opinion pieces. Like you have all these people that do really unique and interesting stuff. So it is definitely hard to get into, but I think that's why people need to find their own voice, their own way of presenting itself. And if you're lucky enough, people will be drawn to that. Because there's also
Yeah.
luck. Luck is a huge factor to people's success at the same time.
Oh, luck is a huge factor in anything with
Yeah.
YouTube and entertainment.
But yeah, there's still
But
people. There's still people that are coming up. Sorry to cut you off, but there's still people that are rising very quickly because they found their audience. Like again, Mr. Clemps is someone that I would highly recommend. He's very funny YouTuber that's very entertaining to watch because he just has a very fun uh, way to his videos. Same thing for Super Butter Buns and Shamey. Like they all have very unique styles to effectively doing a very similar type of video where it's about entertainment first and information second.
Hmm.
And they all kind of came up over the last like year. All of them kind of blew up from like, lower 10,000s to like, I think Shamey and Super Butter Buns are both past 200K now.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
And they just found their audience that people wanted, loved their style of videos, and now they're making a bunch of money on Patreon.
Yeah, I'm happy for them all. Like I just love the fact that you can go in now, and it's just like gaming and in YouTube gaming. Now you can, if you're in the mood for whatever you're in the mood for, you can watch it or you can play it.
So
and that's the best part.
Yeah. So my last advice for anybody that's listening for like any advice would be never be deterred just because there's other people doing something similar. Like never let people tell you that, oh, it's too hard to break into gaming. Like that's impossible. You're never going to get found. It's like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
And if you don't take that opportunity to even just make an attempt, like just try, like like if you don't succeed, like, you lost a few hours of editing and writing. Like that's the worst that could happen. But
I think the other thing is it's just practice. Like even
and
though
practice.
we both, me and you, we both cringe at our older videos.
Yeah.
I look at them like, you know what? That's me, finding this edge that I'm gonna have.
And you can find that in every YouTuber. I would be shocked to find any YouTuber that says they like their old stuff. Like I know, I've heard Clems talk about he cringes at all of his old stuff. I think Butterbuns has said the same thing. Nobody feels confident about their first video, and I feel a lot of people take it down because they don't like it or it doesn't represent their current stuff.
I'm leaving it up. My first video was an unboxing of Xenogears or Xenoblade Chronicles X in the background there. That's why it's in the background too, because it's just nostalgic. But I'm like, that's my first video. It was horrible. Really
But
bad.
staying up there for prosperity.
It's staying up there because it shows. Like this is how far I've come.
Yeah.
Anyways, any final? You want to say anything else? You want to plug your channel?
No, I think if you're good with that, I think that was a pretty good talk. Hopefully that rambling in the middle wasn't too much, but
we talked for an hour and about 20 minutes.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Most of that was for the games industry, but it's just fun to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. It's fun to shoot the shit about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, guys, subscribe to Foxcade's channel or Fox's channel.
Yeah.
If you like what I do here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well. Leave a comment and tell me what you think about it, whatever. Once again, I'm kind of exhausted. My mind's like blown. I'll see you guys here again next time. As always, I thank you so much for watching. Bye. You don't want to say bye? Why does no one ever want to say bye at the end of these things?
I thought you wrapped it up.